This video contains spoilers for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. You have been warned. Hey gang, it's Squill, and in my opinion, one of the most underrated genres of media out there, if it even counts as a genre, is that of the spin-off. Now, I'm sure when I say spin-off, a lot of you just think cheap, lazy cash grabs made to coast off of the success of an original property. And to be fair, many of them are. But that's not what I'm talking about. Because a good spin-off can take a character from the original property and expand on them, giving them new depth and layers. It can add to the world of the original, or introduce new characters that makes the world feel more lived in. And in my opinion, the crowning achievement when it comes to spin-offs is none other than Slippin' Jimmy. Better Call Saul, baby. Yeah, Better Call Saul is just a masterpiece, and easily one of my favorite shows of all time. Would I call it better than Breaking Bad? That's kinda hard to say. The two shows are different from each other in a lot of ways, so it sorta just depends on what mood I'm in. Breaking Bad is definitely the more intense and exciting show, with higher stakes and bigger action set pieces. It's one of those shows where any character could die at any moment, which really keeps its audience on their toes. Better Call Saul, on the other hand, is a lot slower and more character-driven. It really takes its time to build up to the big dramatic moments, but when the show finally gets there, those moments hit like a truck. Breaking Bad is the more exciting show, but Better Call Saul is the more artistic show, which to some extent I have more respect for. But again, whichever I prefer depends on my mood. But this video isn't about which show I prefer, it's about how Better Call Saul recontextualizes Jimmy McGill, or Saul Goodman, into easily the most tragic character within the Breaking Bad universe. Let's start by discussing his portrayal in Breaking Bad so we can see what Better Call Saul had to work with. As I've said before, Breaking Bad is definitely one of the most intense and dramatic shows I've ever seen. While the show definitely has its fair share of lighter moments, said moments are not in the forefront. This is where Saul Goodman comes in as a comedic relief character of sorts. He breaks up the tone a little by giving us some of the funnier and more lighthearted scenes when such is needed. Bob Odenkirk absolutely nails his performance as a sleazy criminal lawyer man. But this isn't to say that Saul is unimportant, as not only does he help launder Walt and Jesse's money, but he also introduces Walt to Gustavo Fring, who distributes their meth throughout seasons 3 and 4. In many ways, Walt wouldn't have gotten as far as he did without Saul. But despite all of that, Saul is still a relatively shallow character in Breaking Bad, with much less depth compared to other characters. He's not really given any dramatic moments himself, and is more so used as an outlet for dramatic moments involving other characters. So I can't really blame anyone who initially thought that a Saul Goodman spin-off was a bad idea. However, Better Call Saul ended up proving those naysayers wrong by adding new layers to Saul's character that makes us look at him in a different light. And the show accomplishes this by introducing new characters that bring out different sides to Jimmy McGill. The first of which is Chuck McGill, Jimmy's mentally ill older brother. The relationship between Jimmy and Chuck is very complicated. Chuck never truly believed in Jimmy and clearly resents him for wanting to be a lawyer like him. Jimmy didn't work as hard as Chuck, but is more successful just by the virtue of being inherently more likable. And to be fair, Jimmy was definitely sleazy from the start, but he also genuinely tried for the approval of his brother. But Chuck never truly believed in Jimmy. He never expected him to change or do any good with his life. He always looked down on Jimmy and never wanted him to succeed. So when Chuck commits suicide at the end of season 3, Jimmy getting reprimanded by him is the last memory he has of him. Not to mention having just sabotaged Chuck's insurance, which directly led to Chuck's suicide. But he gladly lets Howard take the blame for it to avoid coping with the loss of his brother. A harrowing sign for what's to come. But speaking of Howard, he's another character who really made Jimmy into the way we see him in Breaking Bad. At the start of Better Call Saul, it was easy to view Howard as just the bad guy. Someone who frequently denied Jimmy a job at HHM for no particular reason. But as we learn near the end of season 1, it was actually Chuck who denied Jimmy, and Howard just took the fall for it. Howard actually really admires Jimmy and wanted him on the firm. And in fact, he does offer Jimmy a job after Chuck's death. However, this was too little too late for Jimmy, as not only did he decline the job, But he also made it his personal mission to get revenge on Howard by pulling childish pranks on him. With his and Kim's prank in season 6 to make Howard look like a drug addict, leading to him being humiliated in front of the rest of the firm, as well as, albeit indirectly, his own death at the hands of Lalo Salamanca, someone who Jimmy previously thought was dead coming back to kill Howard for basically no reason. An event so traumatizing it continued to haunt him even years after Lalo's death. While it was definitely a case of Howard being at the wrong place at the wrong time, the only reason why he even was at Jimmy's house was because of his pranks. And now Howard is dead, with all of his family and friends thinking that he was a drug addict. But the relationship that had the biggest effect on Jimmy was the one he had with Kim Wexler. At the start of the show, Kim is someone who wants to be an honest and morally correct lawyer. She has a genuine desire to help people, and yet something attracts her to a sleazy con man like Jimmy. As much as she doesn't want to admit it, she just has fun pulling off schemes with him. And the more the series goes on, the more Kim's morals are corrupted by Jimmy. To the point where by season 6, she's the one taking charge on the plans against Howard, making her arguably worse than Jimmy. Jimmy and Kim get off on the fact that they're ruining Howard's life. They revel in it. But when it all comes crashing down, Kim realizes that she and Jimmy are truly bad for each other. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the last scene we get in the Better Call Saul timeline is Jimmy and Kim's breakup. And the scene we get directly after is of Jimmy fully consumed within his Saul Goodman persona. Throughout all of the trauma Jimmy has faced, he's always had Kim there to comfort him, someone to ground him. So without her, he's basically just a shell of his former self. So when looking at his appearance in Breaking Bad in retrospect, I no longer see him as the haha funny lawyer man, but as a sad, lonely individual who represses all of his trauma. Jimmy uses Saul Goodman as a mask to hide the vulnerable person he truly is. It's actually a very similar transition to that of Walter White, seeing a flawed but well-meaning person become corrupted. Except in Jimmy's case, we see the outcome before the actual arc. So while Walt's arc is relatively straightforward, with Jimmy's we have to fill in the pieces a bit more. Jimmy McGill is a deceptively tragic character, one whom you have to watch the entire series in order to fully understand. He's one of my favorite fictional characters of all time for just how well crafted and nuanced he is. Which is what makes it so satisfying to see Jimmy finally own up to his actions in the Better Call Saul finale. He didn't get off scot-free, of course. He'll still probably spend the rest of his life in jail. He can finally live the rest of his life with a free conscience, no longer haunted by his past. It's a simple but perfect ending for him that really rounds out his arc throughout the course of the show. But let me know how you feel about Saul's arc in the comments, and have a good one. Squill, out.